1980s car audio ads were so cool, showing this Trans Am, this Orion ad with the Moon and Stars logo, talking about come see us at Summer CES. Well, today we're going to look at an Orion 280GX to find out what it's all about. Sold between 1985 and 1992, possibly late 1984, the Orion 280GX was one of Orion's original car audio amplifiers. Back in September of 1988, Car Audio and Electronics did a test of 6 power amplifiers, including the Orion 280GX, the Rockford Punch 150, Alphasonic PMA 2175, Linear Power 1752, Hyphonics Odin, and Soundstream D200. In the article, they spent a lot of time talking about the EMI noise filtering of the power supply of the Orion 280GX, and they also commented several specifications seem to be needlessly exaggerated.
40,000 at 0 ohm. 0.
If we pull out the owner's manual, which covers a lot of different models of the Orion early generation Moon and Stars, you'll see the specifications here. And I think what they were referring to probably is the distortion, 0.006. Also, frequency response was 6 Hz to 30 kHz within 0.5 dB. Signal noise ratio better than 110 dB. That's probably over-exaggerated. The 280GX came in 3rd place in the shootout. If you'd like to see the article, I'll leave a PDF link in the description below. Now let's move to Spring 1988 Car Stereo Review, where they have a directory of amplifiers, including the 280GX. $459 back in 1988 is equivalent to $1,200 in 2023. Here you can see the Moon and Stars logo, while we refer to these as Moon and Stars. Orion 280GX, 160 watts RMS, handcrafted in the USA. Let's take a look at one end of the amp. As you can see, there's not a whole lot going on here. We don't have crossover adjustments, any fancy controls with bass and treble. This is really just an amplifier. Here on the far left, you can see power is rated at 12 volts, 4 ohms, watts RMS. We're going to check that out when we do the amp dyno test. These early model Orions have gain controls for each channel, power LED over there on the left, RCA inputs, as well as a DIN plug. Now what this DIN plug is for is it provides signal as well as phantom power for using bridging modules, EQs, and other things like that. These amps are stated to be manufactured to meet military quality standards. In other words, good enough for government work.
This is not a Mickey Mouse program!
Other end of the amp is very basic as well. Power and ground wires coming out, as well as a little plug there for the speaker wires and the remote turn on. There's also a floating ground wire, which you can't see, which is between the power and ground, like a 12 gauge. So here's a Molex plug. I do have videos showing how you can get these from Mauser and other places. I'll leave links in the video description for those. I like to use these terminal blocks. They help out for connecting up the wires. And if you want to see all this, again, I'll leave all these links in the video description. I've made dozens of videos on Orion amps before, especially the old school ones, including an overview of this exact amp like 10 years ago. As far as dimensions, the 280GX measures 11 inches by 8.5 inches by 2.25 inches, millimeter equivalents to there as well. Shared a heat sink with the Orion 225 HCCA. Again, I've made several videos on these before. Check links in the video description, but check out the gold GS1000. That's right, handmade, hand-tuned, 24 karat gold plated amplifier from back in the day. Now, I did do a video on the bigger brother, the GS300. You can check that one out in the link below. But check out the price of these GS series. The GS1000, $1,000 back in 1988. That's $2,600 equivalent in 2023. Ratings include 80 watts by 2 at 4 ohms, 160 by 2 at 2 ohms, or 320 watts bridged, all at 12 volts DC. Now, in order to bridge this amplifier, you need something like the Orion 400 BDG. We'll show this more later when we do the bridge test. You can also use an audio control 2XS or some of the early 4XS models that have the channel invert option. Now, before we get to the guts of the amp, we got to fire it up and put it on the amp dyno, see how it performs. Now, if you just climbed out from under a rock and haven't seen the amp dyno test before, here on the dyno screen, we'll show you power output in watts on the left, ohm load is in the middle, voltage of the dyno is on the right. We also have the remote clamp display hooked up so we can calculate efficiency of this Class AB amplifier.
Let's do this.
Powering up the Orion 280GX, you'll notice I have it connected via DIN plug, which we have the 400 BDG hooked up as well. What this does is, in the mixed mono output, flips the right channels, makes the yellow negative and the yellow black positive, and we'll show that more when we get to the bridge test. So let's try 8 ohms, 2 channels. There's no ratings provided at 8 ohms. It's really a home audio test, but I figure you guys might want to see it anyway. Certified test, 1 kilohertz, mid-13s. What are we going to get? Right around 40 watts, 40 and 43 at 13.6. Now we skipped the uncertified test because it was so close, so we just jumped straight to the dynamic test, but I will show you all the results in the result sheet once we get done. As you can see, the dynamic test is virtually the same anyway, 43 and 40 at 13.67. And next up, we're going to try 4 ohms, 2 channels, rated 80 watts by 2 at 12 volts. We're going to start off in the mid-13s, 1 kilohertz track, and we're right at it, 80 and 77 at 13.46. Now let's try dynamic, see if we can get over 80 watts. This amplifier does have a regulated power supply, so it's going to limit the dynamic headroom, even though the manual says it has 3 dB of dynamic headroom, 82 and 77. Now let's crank that voltage down to closer to 12 volts, because they say it is rated 80 watts times 2 at 12. So we're running the test here at 12 volts, and yes, we get 80 watts exactly per channel. Very cool. Now at 2 ohms, I think they're reaching a little bit here with 160 watts by 2 at 12 volts, because if it did just right at 80 at 4 ohms, I doubt it's going to double that at 2 ohms, but let's see what we get here. 1 kilohertz track, 144 and 135, so about 140 watts. Is a little bit shy there of the 160 by 2. What about dynamically? Can we get the 160 dynamically? And once again, this regulated power supply is good when you have low voltage, but it's bad when you have the additional power available and the amp just kind of clamps down. Now let's turn that voltage down once again, closer to 12 volts, and see what it does. 1 kilohertz track, certified to 1% distortion. What can we get? And we get 141 and 146, about 143 watts average per channel. A little bit shy there of that 160 watt rating. Now here you can see the DIN plug that goes between the bridging module and the amplifier. Your RCAs go into the bridging module, and you have several options for how to run the amp. We use the mixed mono mode, and you can see here, and in this mode we're going to use the orange as the positive and the yellow as the negative. So this will bridge the amp so we can run these bridge tests. 8 ohms mono, rated 160 watts at 12 volts. Certified test first. We ran this one at 40 hertz because we figured if you're bridging the amp, you're probably going to use it on subwoofers. So look at this. We're right at it. 158 at 13.33. Very close to the rated power, even though we're a little bit high on the voltage according to 12 volts versus 13.5. Uncertified up to clipping. We did see some different numbers here, so we did run it uncertified. And we did get over that 160. We got 166, 13.33. Next up, we'll try the dynamic. Again, 40 hertz pulse track here. Let's see what we get. Actually, looks like I ran the 1 kilohertz track. 169, 13.68. All right, 4 ohms bridge, rated 320 watts at 12 volts. If you remember, the 2 ohm test before at stereo is the same thing pretty much as 4 ohms bridge. But we did use the 40 hertz track. We got 226 certified at 13.06. That is a long ways away percentage-wise from the rated 320 watts. Let's try it uncertified, and not much more, 222 at 13.12, so nearly 100 watts off that rated power. When you're only talking 320 watts, that is a big deal. And dynamically, again, regulated power supply also regulates amplifier's dynamic power. We did get 241 at 13.2. Now let's turn that voltage down to 12 volts, and let's try the 1 kilohertz track and see what we get here. Certified 4 ohms bridged, and we get right at 300. We get 296 right at 12 volts. So it's interesting that the 1 kilohertz track gives you so much more power than the 40 hertz track. And we're going to turn the voltage up to around 14.4 and try it again at 1 kilohertz bridge, and we get 305 at 14.28. Here are the results of all the tests we just showed. Also the efficiency, which was in the 30s for the most part. Ouch! These amps have been revered over the years for their sound quality. So even though they don't really do their rated power at 2 ohms or 4 ohms bridged, how do they work with speakers? Let's try them out and find out. I know back in the day we loved these Blue Thunder subwoofers and subwoofers like this, but I gotta tell you, today's subwoofers are so much better. For example, this Savard Hi-Q 6.5 inch sub actually kills that 10. Let's give it a listen. Old school amps like this really don't push out a whole lot of power. It's only a little over like 220 watts at 4 ohms bridged. But hey, it pushed this Savard Hi-Q 6.5 pretty well and sounded really good. Let's try the woofer test. Getting into this amp involves taking off one of the end panels and then just sliding the bottom plate off. And if you've seen my Orion 225 HCCA videos before, you've seen pretty much this amp. 16 volt, 3300 microfarad here on the power supply, 1000 microfarad, 35 volts on the rails. Pretty much the same amp as the 225 HCCA. This one does have higher rail voltages, and it has a different wound transformer. And lastly, just for fun, this amp is not rated at 2 ohms mono, but we're going to try dynamic 1 kilohertz, 2 ohms bridge to see how much power we can get out of this amp. And here we go. Roll that beautiful beam footage. Can we get 400 watts? Yes! Oh man, we're over 400. 407 at 14.38. Make sure you like the video, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. More videos coming soon. Big D, I'm out of here.